Hello, and welcome to Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I'm really glad you're here today. Today's story is every parent's worst nightmare. You are close with your kids, you love them, you're in constant contact with them, and then suddenly you cannot get in touch with them no matter how hard you try. You worry, as you have every time this has happened, which if you've raised teenagers, you know it happens often, but this time you feel something is different. You can just feel it. And then your nightmare comes true. This is the story of Brittany Ulacki, Cowgirl Gone. I'm your host, Stacy Lee. Let's begin. Our story begins in Elko, Nevada, a town I am familiar with. I have friends from Elko, and I've played several shows there back in my touring days. We'd always hit Elko when we were between Salt Lake, Reno, and Vegas, and there are some hard drinking bars there. Elko is a small town of about 21,000 people. It sits in the high desert of Nevada, and the area straddles the Humboldt River. Elko is isolated. The closest town is 130 miles away. It's a college town, home to Great Basin College, and the people who live there are just as you'd expect. Rural, country folks who stick together and consider themselves hardworking Americans. About 15 minutes from Elko is the small bedroom community of Spring Creek, where about 15,000 people make their homes. The family we're talking about today made their home in this area, and pretty much everyone knew who they were. On March 15th, 2020, which was a Sunday, Jim Ulacki, a native of Spring Creek, was headed to band practice. Jim and his buddies played in a metal cover band, and each Sunday they got together to go over their set list. Jim's daughter, Brittany, always tagged along. Brittany Ulacki was a strong-willed and independent 16-year-old girl. She loved horses and dreamed of becoming a rodeo star. Brittany was opinionated and not scared about sharing her opinions. Her father says when she tagged along to band practice, she was quick to tell the band members when they missed a note or didn't sound good, even though she didn't play herself. Her parents described Brittany as a firecracker, someone who was always up for a good time and always looking for the next adventure. On that day in March of 2020, Brittany got bored at band practice and after texting her friends, decided that she was going to leave. Brittany told her dad that one of her friends was going to come and pick her up, and then they were going to go hang out with a group of kids at Angel Park. Jim wanted Brittany to wait for him, but she said no, she was going with her friends, and she left. After band practice, Jim went out to eat with his bandmates. Oh, I miss those after practice meals. I miss those days sometimes. And then Jim got into his truck and started calling Brittany. She did not pick up her phone. In fact, the phone went right to voicemail, which was something that gave Jim a sinking feeling. Brittany's phone never went to voicemail. Brittany and Jim were very, very close. Brittany always called Jim every hour when she was out. Jim said he didn't require this, but Brittany did it anyway because she was respectful and didn't want her dad to worry. So when hours had gone by without a call from Brittany and Jim couldn't get a hold of his daughter on the phone, he started to get a very bad feeling. Jim called a second time and a third time as he drove home. No answer. Jim got to his house and Brittany wasn't there. She'd left band practice around 3 that afternoon and it was now almost 7 o'clock and Jim was getting worried. Brittany lived with her dad. Her parents were divorced. So the first thing Jim did was call Brittany's mom. She hadn't heard from Brittany either. Brittany's mom asked what was going on, and that's when Jim told his ex-wife that Brittany had left band practice that afternoon with a friend. Who was the friend? Bryce Dickey. Brittany's younger brother, James Jr., had Bryce's phone number, so Jim told his youngest son to call Bryce. Bryce picked up the phone and he told James Jr. that yes, he had picked Brittany up from the band practice and that he had taken her to the high school to meet a new friend. James Jr. said, well, what new friend? What's his name? And Bryce told James Jr. he didn't know. Jim and James Jr. tried tracking Brittany's phone using Friend Finder, but her phone was off, so that app wasn't working. I wish there was a way that Apple could fix that. I'm sure Android has a similar program, but if your phone is off, you can't track the phone. It would be nice to change that. For this very purpose. The sun went down and still no word from Brittany, and that's when Jim called 911 to report his daughter missing. The Elko County Sheriff's Office took the report and reassured Jim that most missing teenagers come home in a few hours, that she was probably just distracted. Jim told the police that his daughter never did this and that she never turned off her phone, but her phone was in fact off. The police have the ability that users do not to ping a phone even when it's turned off, and so that's what they did. Brittany's phone pinged off a deserted road not far from the high school. The sheriff's office sent 2 deputies to the area where Brittany's phone pinged. They searched the entire area but found nothing. Then the police went to speak with Bryce Dickey. He told the same story he had told Brittany's brother. He said he picked Brittany up, they drove around and hung out for about 3 hours, and then he dropped Brittany off at the high school. Now, Brittany had even posted photos on Snapchat, this photo in particular, of she and Bryce hanging out that day. So Bryce's story checked out. The cops asked who this friend was, the one Brittany met at the high school, and Bryce said he didn't know. Bryce said the guy was a tall white guy wearing a cowboy hat and driving a green Ford F-150. It had step sides, and he thought it was an early 2000s model. Now, this is Elko, Nevada. In some ways, it's similar to my hometown of Cedar City without the stringent guidelines and alcohol rules and a lot of Mormons. But in both towns, there are a lot of guys who drive old pickup trucks. A lot of guys who wear cowboy hats. In these smaller towns, if you live in one, you don't know everyone, but if someone new moves in, you know pretty quickly, and the people you don't know, you've at least seen around. Nobody knew about this new person in town, a new guy driving an old pickup truck. So the cops just kept interviewing people. Sunday came and went, and Brittany never returned home, and her folks knew this was very, very bad. The following day, Monday, Jim Ulacki rises early in the morning. He gets in his truck and starts driving around looking for his daughter. By this time, he is in a full panic, and so is Brittany's mother, Alicia. Going missing is not something their daughter would do by choice. The police begin speaking with Brittany's friends. Teenagers and their friends usually know things about each other that their own parents do not, When the police speak with Brittany's best friend, Kara Ashby, they learn something new. Brittany had been DMing someone named JT. Brittany's mom got onto her own social media account and realized that someone had sent her a private message telling her to look into who JT was. So Brittany's mom, Alicia Tolhurst, got busy calling all of Brittany's friends. No one but her best friend had heard the name JT. While Alicia was busy on the phone, Jim drove out to the deserted road where Brittany's phone had last pinged. As he drove, he looked for birds circling in the sky because he knew his daughter, and he knew that if she didn't come home, it's because she couldn't. Like I said, the worst. The police were more optimistic than Jim, and they continued looking for Brittany as though she was a missing person. Kara Ashby, Brittany's best friend, then told Alicia that she thought Brittany might be with JT, but the problem was she didn't know any other name for him, and there were a lot of guys who went by JT and drove green trucks in Elko, Nevada. The police began going through DMV records and property records, looking for anyone who might be a lead past the initials JT, who drove a pickup truck like that. They found nothing. The police then called Bryce Dickey and asked him to meet them at the high school to show them exactly where he'd dropped Brittany off. As they spoke, Bryce motioned and showed the cops where he'd dropped Brittany off, and the police asked, was the truck light green, bright green? And Bryce told them dark forest green. The cops asked, did you talk to Brittany at all after you dropped her off? And Bryce said no. He said he'd just gone back home. The police, friends, and family were facing a major problem. The sheer isolation of Elko and Spring Creek. This is a place of massive expanses of land full of abandoned mine shafts. This is mining country. And they had to cover a lot of ground with very few police officers. As word of Brittany's disappearance began to spread around Elko and Spring Creek, a new theory began to form. Brittany's friends loved her and she was very close with them, but there were other people in town that did not like Brittany at all. Brittany was known to be someone who put off a tough girl attitude, and she wasn't afraid to get into a fight. This had led Brittany to have some enemies, even at her young age. Brittany's friends organized a group chat and began to share information in that chat. They were also helping search for Brittany. The other kids made missing flyers and posted on social media about Brittany, and they got into their own trucks and drove around, hitting all of the spots kids hang out in these types of towns to see if they could find any sign of Brittany. In the middle of this group of friends was Bryce Dickey, very concerned, setting up search parties, helping in any way he could to find his missing friend, helping any way he could to identify JT. And then Kara Ashby told Brittany's parents something. Brittany had been DMing a rodeo guy on TikTok, a guy who lived in New York. So then everyone began to wonder, had this guy come all the way from New York to meet up with Brittany? Had something happened to her because of this meetup, or had she run away with him? They also had to wonder, was the TikToker the same person as JT? They thought perhaps Brittany had him in her phone as something that wasn't his real name. Maybe she was calling him JT, but that wasn't his name. The rumors around town grew. People said maybe Brittany had been trafficked. Maybe she was drinking somewhere and had too much to drink. Maybe she ran away because some people didn't like her. The more the police looked into this disappearance, the more they came to know Brittany, and the more they heard about her very strong personality and the fact that she had made some real enemies in this small town. The more the other kids talked, the cops learned that Brittany was being bullied at school. She had once been quite popular, but because of her attitude, she'd fallen out of favor with the other kids at school, and there was a group of girls that viciously and relentlessly bullied Brittany. One of the kids at school turned a video over to the police. I've got some images here of that video. In 2019, Brittany got into a vicious fight with a group of girls, a physical fight where Brittany was fighting not one girl, but two. As you can see, the fight was violent and it was filmed and then, of course, passed around for all the kids at school to see. After viewing the video, police, along with Brittany's parents, began to wonder if the girls in the video might have something to do with Brittany's disappearance. It was now 2 days since anyone had last seen Brittany. Her parents were beside themselves with worry and were doing everything they could to find their daughter. And then Alicia, Brittany's mother's phone went off. It was a text message. Alicia opened it and read the text. It said, "We've got your daughter. Brittany is alive, and if you ever want to see her again, you're going to have to pay us." Alicia was horrified and hopeful at the same time. A few minutes later, another text came in. It said that the kidnappers had given Brittany some medication and that her time was running out. The kidnappers demanded $10,000 be paid immediately if Brittany's family wanted her back. More text messages came in, all from an unknown number, saying things like, Brittany needs her mom, and if we don't get paid, we're going to feed her to our dogs. The kidnapper then said they wanted the ransom paid in Apple gift cards. That makes no sense at all because you can most definitely trace cards and Apple gift cards. The fact that they were asking for the payment in that form pretty much guaranteed that this was a scam. I don't know how people can be so cruel. I really don't. The police told Alicia that this was a scam, but Alicia did not believe them. She started frantically raising the money throughout the next day, and then the news came. For a third day, volunteers, cops, and family members continued to search for Brittany Ulacki. They were focused on an area called Burner Basin. That's the area where Brittany's phone had last pinged. The volunteers were in trucks and on foot. They were in side-by-sides and on four-wheelers. The cops were spreading out looking as well. One of the searchers spotted a blue tarp, and as he got closer, he could see something was under it. The searcher lifted the tarp, and underneath it was the body of Brittany Ulacki. The volunteer made a call to the police station where Alicia happened to be sitting with the cops. They told her the news. Alicia said that all the strength left her body and she couldn't walk. Jim then got the news. His daughter had been found. His first reaction was relief. Jim said he'd known since Sunday night that his daughter was gone, and he was relieved that she had been found so he would not have to continue wondering where she was. Yeah, like I said at the beginning of the episode, it is every parent's worst nightmare. More cops rushed to the scene where Brittany's body was found. It was in terrible condition. She was lying on her stomach. She had a ligature mark around her neck and a stab wound to her throat. Next to Brittany's body was a small pile of chewing tobacco, which was collected as evidence. You can get DNA from chewing tobacco. About 60 feet from Brittany's body, cops found a condom wrapper, which furthered their belief that Brittany had been sexually assaulted. Her body was removed and taken to the coroner for an autopsy. The cops now had not a missing person case, but a homicide, something they don't see much in the Little Elko area, even though the town can be a bit rough at times.
We walked over here on this side. I'm pretty sure that's their drag marks there.
Actually, I'll just get you guys started on a statement so you don't have to linger around out here. How's that? If you take a couple seconds and fill out your name, information, kind of what you're doing and what you saw.
Yeah.
Probably should go down the bottom and come up, because this is probably what we're going to have to work right here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't see any tracks going in.
That's right.
Yeah, let's go.
Drag mark right there. We got drag marks right there.
Yeah. Big time drag marks.
Yeah, so let's go down the bottom and come up the bottom of the gully. Pictures from the side. Yeah.
Uh-oh. See that?
Yep.
That's not good. Oh, that's a 1092. That's a body.
Yeah.
Let's get out.
Yep.
I can see enough right now. Looks like a girl's hand. Let's back out. Yeah, that's
Yeah. I will. I'm going to get their vehicles out. We'll get the crime scene secured and call stake. Let's go out the same way.
Yep.
We'll process the whole thing.
All right.
Hey, Nick. We got a female body. We have a female body. I don't know if it's her or what, but we have a female body out behind Burner Basin. Got drag marks and a bunch of things. So we had two guys that found them. We're getting their statements. I'll get a picture of their footprints that are going in and out, and I'll get a picture of their tread marks. Basically, she face down, pants down. She's got black heels on, like boots on. Let's grab. We'll get tire print from them, and then also take their shoe prints because they went in there.
Okay.
For exclusion.
Exclusion purposes, yeah. Sounds good to me.
Sorry, you guys got to go through this. This is what I do.
The worst part is I know her dad.
Well, let's not assume.
The investigation into the other girls at school, the bullies, and the ones who had been in the physical fight with Brittany, that went nowhere. The cops had looked into the TikToker from New York. He hadn't left the state. They weren't having any luck locating this JT person, and now they had a dead teenage girl murdered at the hands of a monster who had done terrible things to her, and that search for the monster intensified. Word got back to Kara Ashby, Brittany's friend, and to Bryce that Brittany had been found murdered. They were both inconsolable. Kara could not believe that her best friend was gone. Bryce was sobbing and saying that it all felt like a dream. Kara would later say she felt so sorry for Bryce because he and Brittany had been really close, and Bryce was kind of blaming himself for all of this. He and Brittany had been good friends since middle school. They'd been very, very tight, but never had any romantic interest in each other. Kara and Bryce didn't know each other that well, and as Kara began to speak with other friends of Brittany's, they told her that Bryce was angry. Bryce told these other friends that when he went to meet the cops at the high school, they'd interrogated him and made him feel bad about letting Brittany go with another guy that he didn't know. Kara talked to Bryce and told him she'd been asked many of these same questions, that everyone had been questioned, and it was nothing to be upset about. But Bryce was acting strangely. Now, like I said, Kara didn't know Bryce as well as Brittany had. Kara thought Bryce was awkward, and she hadn't spent a lot of time with him because she never felt comfortable around him. Bryce didn't talk a lot and was always just kind of hanging around the friend group. Now, Jim had an issue with Bryce's story from the beginning because he knew that his daughter, Brittany, would never have gotten into a car with someone that Jim didn't know. Brittany knew that her dad would have been very, very angry had she gotten into a car with someone that he had not met, that Jim had not met, and that she would have at least called to say where she was going. The cops started to rewatch the tape of their meeting with Bryce at the high school, and as they did, they realized that Bryce's story seemed a little rehearsed, like he was following a script, and so they decided to take a closer look at the teenager. 2 days after Brittany's body was found, the cops called Bryce Dickey and asked him to come down to the police station. With Bryce in an interview room, he was asked to give a cheek swab so cops could get his DNA profile. Bryce took the swab from the officer and put it into his mouth, swabbed his cheek, and handed it back. He didn't have any issue giving his DNA to the police. As the cops watched their interaction with Bryce in the parking lot, they noticed something. First, Bryce said that the cowboy was standing next to his truck waiting for Brittany. But on the day they took the DNA swab, Bryce said the cowboy was sitting inside his truck. Now, cops look for these little details in a suspect's story because of the way our brains work. When we see something with our own eyes or experience it, we don't have a problem telling the same story over and over. When we make something up, our brain doesn't store the details in the same way, and retellings of the story can change as we forget what we've said in the past. The police take a closer look at the photo Brittany posted on Snapchat on the day Bryce picked her up from band practice. Here, you can see a very specific type of sagebrush in the background, and to Bryce's left, a ridge of mountains in the distance. The police realized this was the exact view from the crime scene, the place where they had found Brittany's body. 8 days after Brittany's body was found, the police called Bryce Dickey in for a third time. He tells a similar story to the one he gave in the parking lot. He says they drove around, then he took her back to the high school, dropped her off, and gave her a big hug. Bryce thinks he's got his story down pat, but this interview does not go well for him.
Just had you sit down in here real quick. Can I get you anything?
Oh, no, I'm okay.
All right, I'll be right back. I'll go over this with you.
Okay.
Just so you know, everything in this room is recorded and everything like that. So.
Okay. Hey, brother.
Well, tell me about Brittany. What's she like?
You're gonna have to ask a question because that's a lot. Brittany is not in like a bad way or anything, but I mean.
Right. Well, what was Brittany to you?
Honestly, Brittany was my little sis. Like, I've known her since 7th or 8th grade, one of the closest people to me. I didn't even start calling her, I called her little sis for about the last 2.5, 3 years, but she called me big brother since probably about right after the first year that I met her, but, one of the closest people to me. A lot of people didn't like her for a lot of reasons, but she was very blunt and kept to who she was, even if a lot of people didn't like that. So that was why a lot of people in Spring Creek didn't like her, just because she was extremely honest. No, she was always happy. She would get in a lot of like actual fights, but then a month later, she would be best friends with the person she got in a fight with. She knew almost everyone. Seemed like there wasn't somebody in this town she didn't know. But she was extremely sweet. Pretty much always had a smile on her face. I blame myself for all this. Even though,
Why do you blame yourself?
I mean, I know that I didn't know what was going to happen, but I mean, I'm the last one that freaking saw her before she's dead. And I mean, her mom even made me promise that I wouldn't blame myself, but kind of still have a lot of regrets and a lot of stuff I wish I would have done differently that day.
We promise we won't tell your girlfriend. Had you ever been intimate with...
I got that question the last 2 times. Brittany and I have never been intimate in any way. I mean, like, a lot of people get the wrong intentions because, I mean, do it with all my friends, but, like, calling my female friends love and stuff like that, but that's just kind of the way I was raised in a sense, the grammar-wise, but Brittany and I have never had a relationship or have been intimate in any way. That's why my girlfriend was comfortable with her, is because she never flirted with me or anything like that.
Did you ever want to be?
No, not
Never.
No, I never had that want or urge or anything. I literally saw Brittany as my little sister.
And is there any way that your DNA could be associated with this case in any way?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I'm kind of confused about a couple things. What if I told you we had surveillance footage that her truck kept going out Boyd Kennedy Road?
I didn't go down Boyd Kennedy Road.
I just want to kind of clear everything up and get your explanation for this, okay? Because you seem like a decent guy. We've been sitting here chatting and stuff like that, okay? And I just want to kind of help you through this.
Kept asking me if I killed Brittany, so
Somebody asked you if you killed Brittany?
a deputy did.
Oh, okay.
And it honestly startled the shit out of me. And I don't want to, I know I'm only been 18 for a little bit now, but I know I'm 18 now, so even changing a little bit on the story isn't a big thing.
Well, it is what it is. Okay, that's why I'm trying to sort through it. We located some items, or an item. Okay, do you have any idea what that item might be?
No.
Okay. What if I told you that it had both yours and Brittany's DNA on it?
What would that be?
Do you have any idea?
No.
Now's the time to be truthful.
I'm being 100% sir. I don't know what you're referring to.
Now, you told me before that you and Brittany had never been intimate in a sexual way.
No.
Okay, what if I said I had evidence that shows that that might not be accurate either?
I'm not lying. I've never kissed. I've never had sex with Brittany. Besides hugging and I've never had sex or any intimate relationship with Brittany.
Okay. Have you ever watched TV and seen DNA comparisons?
No. I mean, I've watched crime shows, but haven't really paid attention to it.
So, you gave a DNA sample, right?
Yes.
Okay. We found a condom. All right. And we found Brittany. And we have Brittany's DNA,
Okay.
we have your DNA, and we have a condom.
That can't be.
It is.
Okay. Listen.
I've never had sex with Brittany. I swear. I've never had sex with Brittany.
Okay. So then explain to me how...
I don't know. I'm freaking out right now because I've never had sex with Brittany.
Okay.
I've never
so
had
explain
sex.
to me how a condom has your DNA on the inside and her DNA on the outside. Because that doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense, and I don't...
And you can understand my concerns that, you know, I've been truthful with you, okay? And I
Yes,
know
sir.
I know this is really stressful, okay? I can't imagine where you're at, all right? But we'll get through this together, okay? And I need you to help me help you, all right? We've got a condom that was recovered near Brittany's body, and it has DNA on it with both you and Brittany, okay? And you told me that you guys had never been intimate, all right? There's only one way that DNA could have gotten on that condom that way.
I'm aware of that.
And you have a pattern now of lying. You were deceptive to Detective Fisher because you got scared. You just admitted that.
I admitted I was
And
scared.
your timeline doesn't match up.
Kind of losing your guys' trust by the second here, and let's just be honest about that. Am I correct? I'm not meaning to stretch on. I'm just asking. But down there, I had sex with Brittany, and then I got done having sex, and then it got really quiet in the truck. It was really awkward, and I think we were both kind of like regretting it in some sort. And she literally just told me to just drop her off, and I didn't know where to drop her off, and she wouldn't tell me anything. And then
You've been sitting on this knowledge without saying anything to anybody?
because I've had the entire town of Spring Creek asking me if I've killed Brittany.
And you might as well have if you didn't say anything.
So this is the story that you're going to stick with.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead, stand up and face that way. Separate your feet and put your hands behind your back.
As you saw in that clip, Bryce Dickey's DNA was found on the inside of the condom found at the crime scene. Brittany's DNA was found on the outside. You are looking at a monster, an 18-year-old monster who I truly believe is an incredibly dangerous predator and have no doubt would have gone on to kill more women had he not been caught so early in life. Brittany's death, if anything could come out of it that even remotely resembles something positive, is that she stopped an incredibly dangerous monster from killing other women in the future. I believe that with every fiber of my being. This is a little psycho in the making. Bryce Dickey was arrested, as you saw in that clip. Everyone involved believes that on that fateful day, Bryce made an advance on Brittany, and when he didn't get what he wanted, he assaulted Brittany and then killed her. She must have felt... This is one of her best friends. Sometimes when I write these stories, I can't help but put myself in the victim or the perpetrator's shoes. And because I've been to this high desert area, I thought about her laying on her back in that sagebrush, in the cold dirt, probably struggling for her life. That is bad enough. This was one of her good friends. This is someone she had been friends with for years. Can you imagine what was going through that poor girl's mind? It is just hard for me not to think about that. Prosecutors later uncovered that Bryce's favorite movie is American Assassin. And in that film, someone is killed with the same single stab wound to the neck that was inflicted on Brittany. I haven't seen that film, but I am going to watch it now. Bryce Dickey was put on trial. Jim, Brittany's dad, said it was all he could do to sit in the courtroom without attacking Bryce. He had it figured out in his head, like how quick he could get to him, what he was going to do. I don't blame him one bit. I don't. The trial lasted 10 days. In May of 2022, Bryce Dickey was found guilty of the murder of Brittany Ulacki. Bryce was later sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 70 years. I know this is not going to make Brittany's loved ones feel any better, but I do this for a living, and I've been doing it for 5 years, and I've been into true crime a lot longer than that. Brittany's death saved other women. I know it. I know it. I know it's no consolation, believe me, but I also feel it's important to put that out there. This kid is a monster. The hanging around, the not talking a lot, the closeness with girls telling them that he's their buddy, the social introversion that's also a little bit creepy, the awkwardness. This is a predator. I want to send a lot of love to all of those who knew and loved Brittany. The Dark Hearts community is so sorry for your loss. The loss of a child is, again, every parent's worst nightmare. But to have your child taken in such a brutal manner by someone that she loved and trusted, that is the ultimate betrayal. We want you all to know that we hope you are healing in the best way you know how. As for Bryce Dickey, I hope he is never let out of prison. I firmly believe this is a serial killer in the making, and I firmly believe that Brittany Ulacki will be remembered as the person who stopped him when he took her life on a lonely high desert road on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you for joining me today on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Please hit the like button if you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. It does help. I'm not real optimistic at this point, but do what you can. You guys know I'm on a little bit of a clock here. Been doing this for almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in May. The channel just has not grown in the way that I need it to in order for me to stay here. And the podcast is going really, really well. I want to give a special thank you to my patrons. Your support means the world to me. Speaking of the podcast, Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee, you can find it on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. I post brand new episodes every Monday and every Wednesday. We're still in the midst of our fundraiser. If you watch this short video on my channel, it will tell you all the ways you can donate a few bucks. We are planning to donate the money to police departments that have cold case DNA in storage that has never been tested. We're trying to get those kits tested so we can get that perpetrator's DNA in the system and possibly help solve a cold crime. I appreciate each and every one of you. I truly do. Stay safe, my friends, and be kind to each other. And I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.